doing stuff for a long period of time, you kind of forget about how long you've been doing this sometimes. And, as he mentioned, I just wrote a book. And, part of the process is kind of when you're doing stuff as you're doing it, you just don't really think about the past. And so going through and doing the book was kind of interesting. It's like, wow, this has been an awfully long time. And clearly all the guys we have up here are legendaries in the music industry and have all been doing this for a long time. And I think there's definitely a certain art to it to be doing this for this long, because there's not that many people that are able to do that. And certainly, people starting out now, or even if you have a career now, how do you get it to go for really long? And hopefully we can help you out with a little bit of that today. I guess I'll start out with Rex. So everybody has ups and downs, obviously, clearly. And, Rex also has an amazing book out if you haven't got it yet. You should definitely check it out. Like, when you get to the down periods of time, how is it that you're able to kind of regroup and get excited about music or art again?
Yeah, just pick up a guitar. That's what I do. I think for me, I've got to be true to myself. And that's the most important part of the process of doing. I just did a solo record, and it was going back to, why did I start this in the first place? Screw all the rest of it. I've already had a tremendous everything. But go do something that's going to make yourself happy, and that's how I do it. What is going to make you happy instead of what everybody wants from you, and that's very important for me.
Absolutely. I think 100% for everybody. So, Frankie, you've obviously been touring for how many years now? 30 something? 30 something? Like, how do you, when you've got a tour upcoming, you got to perform every night and be at your best. How are you able to do that even if you're not feeling well or go out? Because, people see you every night and your guys are always amazing.
Thank you.
How is it you can get motivated and up to do that every night?
Well, first, we're lucky enough to do this. That's the truth. We are very fortunate in our lives. Look, we could have been digging ditches right now. So I think of that first. I always think of that, 'cause I come from an Italian-American background, and I see all the people working really hard. My Uncle Joe worked really hard. All these people that I grew up with worked really hard. How fortunate we are to actually be in this position. That's the way I look at it. I just say you have to. Like 102 fever, doesn't matter. You have to play. The runs on stage, not to sound disgusting, been there. Sometimes you have to have 2 pairs of underwear, right? That's just the way it works. I remember we played the Beacon Theater, Anthrax, 3 nights sold out. It was great, blah, blah, blah. All good. Of course, I get the viral infection, right? It starts right off, and I'm thinking, how am I going to make this? 102 fever, just rammed, I'm sweating, and let me tell you something, I was like a faucet. It was a faucet, and what do? Sold out crowd, you're going to go home, I can't do this. No, you got to stiffen up and get it done. And that's just the way I grew up, and I think that's our work ethic. You have to get this work ethic. If you really want it, you have to go for it.
Yeah, big time. And I guess, is it the same for a musician as it is for an athlete? They always say beware of the sick athlete. Like, guys get sick and they have a cold or a flu and they go out and have like one of the best games of their careers. Same thing for a musician, where you go out and you just kind of concentrate on the music and you have a great show.
Yeah, this is a great drug called adrenaline. Adrenaline is key. That and whiskey put together, delicious. It's
worked for me for
awesome.
years.
Yeah, it works for
and it quit.
Him and I have been there together with that quite a lot in our lives together, and then in casino.
Very, very much.
And then Dimebag just pouring more down our throats.
There you go.
Rest his soul. But yeah, look, again, this is how it works. You have to make it happen. It's the same thing from starting. I look at these young bands and how hard it is now. I feel bad for them because it's so much harder now. It was never never easy for us. But man, I said, where do you go now? I will get into this, I'm sure. But man, I just want to help them in any way. It's really tough.
Well, you bring up an interesting point, and I kind of wanted to get to that at some point, so maybe we'll get to it now. And not to say anything bad about anybody that's in a band now or whatever, but I've found, because people ask me all the time, like, how come there aren't a lot of new bands being successful? I think there's a variety of reasons for that. I mean, certainly it's much more difficult for people to find new bands than there were before, and there's a lot of different reasons. But one thing that I notice, and I see in our world, is when we all started out, I never went on tour like this, but I certainly, wasn't, living a big life or anything when we started out. But, bands would go out and they would sleep on people's floors. They'd tour in a Camaro. However you could do it, you would do it. And now I see a lot of bands coming out and their first tour like, hey, where's our tour bus? when do we get the tour bus? So maybe you guys can talk a little bit about, kind of the paying your dues of like Howard, what was the first tour you were ever on like? Or it probably was a huge tour. I don't know. Maybe so.
2 cars.
There you go.
Yeah, definitely. Work ethic. That goes beyond social media and everything else. You can present great music and everything else, but you got to hit the road no matter what. So just, if this is what you love, the sacrifice is going to be worth it. It's going to suck at times, and you're going to complain about it, and but you're going to get up and keep doing it. And then if you need to recharge, you walk away, you recharge, you come back. It's like, oh yeah, I do love this. And
Yeah, I think ultimately it's all about the music. If
Yeah.
you really do love the music, you'll do anything you can to get your music out there. I mean, same thing a little bit to you, Alex, and I'll give this out to you, all you guys, because I think it's another kind of interesting point for musicians is, to do this for a long time, you've been through a lot of managers, you've been through a lot of agents, you've been through a lot of record labels. Like, as a musician, do you navigate kind of those waters of change and, working with different people? And if you have a bad experience with somebody, how does that affect how you move on? I'll start with you.
Okay, well, yeah, I think when you do your first tour, there's nothing like that, just playing every single night. And I think it really comes together for a lot of musicians once you're in that position. And it takes that, and it takes doing that for a long time. A lot of the bands we grew up listening to, before we heard them on the radio or we heard this great record, there was so much history that we didn't know about. I remember when I met K.K. Downing for the first time from Judas Priest, and he was just telling me about Judas Priest had this whole 10-year history that I didn't even know about. Records that had come out that you'd never heard of.
You never heard of.
Yeah.
roll.
Brian knows everything, yes.
Oh, I'm old. I'm old.
And, to use a completely different example, the Eagles. There's a great documentary about the Eagles now. And you find out they've been through so much before you knew them as the Eagles. Some of them were playing with Linda Ronstadt. Others were in different bands. Members joined. But the point is, I think part of what happens now is musicians, younger musicians don't realize how much it takes to get to that point. And it's not entirely their fault. I mean, I think, the industry, too, also has this instant gratification thing. There's this expectation. A band gets together, you need to be putting out records right away. You need to do it while you're young. Youth is so valued in this, especially in the United States. But all the great acts that we grew up listening to really had all this history behind them. And I think, all of us who've been so lucky, what Frank's saying is true. We're so lucky just to be able to have survived the music industry, to name this panel, that you don't realize that there's this development period. And I think that that's something that's just not as valued these days as it used to be.
Well, and to that end, like Frankie, do you think if Anthrax started now, you would have the same success that you've had when after starting 30 years ago?
No, it's a different game now. There's no record sales anywhere for any band other than Adele.
Well,
And Foo Fighters.
finish your thought. We'll talk about that. I know if you guys were here for the last, how many people were here for the last panel? Probably everybody, right? So I know that they talked a lot about streaming and income and stuff. We'll touch on that as well. But I don't want to. If I start repeating what you guys have heard before too much, just let us know. But anyway,
we've done. I mean, thankfully, we've done well with Anthrax, and our fans are our fans. But thank God for them. But look, and what used to be gold records are really dwindled down to not gold records, and half of that maybe. So it's a different business now. But what I do, like you had a great thing that you said before, when you get down and stuff. Even I think what started you, it's that picking up that guitar and writing that riff, and that's where your head has to stay. It has to stay there, because if you look at this fanfare bullshit, the celebrities aspect of it, that doesn't work, because it's all bullshit anyway. It's all a game. All I want to do is play a fucking song. I want to write a good song, and I want to go out there and play it. The rest of it comes. You have to play the ball. You have to play ball with it. But at the end of the day, we still go back to that guitar in our room and write that riff. That's what's important, and don't lose sight. So for the younger bands, that's what it's about. For me, don't lose that. That's what it's about, because then good things will happen. Stay true to that, and good things will happen. That's how you survive, because that will lead you through the bullshit. That's the way I think about
It
it.
negates all the crap.
It does.
You know, it really does. When it boiled, you were saying how fortunate we are. We, you know, all the hard work that we did. You know, I can just say for me personally, and everybody on this stage, that we've all gone through the ups and downs of this whole business and how it's changed. You know, now it's streaming to everything else. Put it all aside, man. It's all about writing that right good song, and it also has to do with timing and good luck and how you do it. But if you remember, you know, when we were coming up, we didn't have social media, we didn't have anything. We had word of mouth, and that one dude would tell, you know, 5 guys, and 5 guys are turned on, and 10 guys that are turned into 100. And that's how you built up your
kinda
crowd.
miss that.
And you busted your ass every goddamn day like it was no tomorrow, whether you're sick or not. And that's just what you did. I mean, I don't think we had a tour bus until the second or third year.
Third
of
record
Pantera.
cycle for us. I
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
So
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
that's not the end all. The tour bus.
Yeah, and to that end, one thing, you know, if you look at the history of heavy metal, and you know, one reason why there's a couple of reasons why we're still here. One of them is probably sitting at the very end of our panel here. In the '90s, if you remember, you know, obviously the late '80s, metal got really stupid, and it kind of got flushed out by the grunge movement. And that kind of took over, even though all those bands were extremely influenced by heavy metal. But they couldn't say anything about metal. It kind of went out. You had to wear flannel shirts and everything. And metal kind of by 96, 97, a lot of people in the industry thought it was dead. And really the one real true metal band of that whole 90s that kind of kept the flags going and were huge is Pantera. So were you guys kind of aware when you're out there doing stuff that, you know, you're kind of the one band kind of raising the metal flag? Were you aware of that, or we're just doing our thing, and you know, we don't really, you know, acknowledge that as much?
A bit of both. I think that, of course, we would, you know, every time that we did any kind of interviews, and of course we didn't have a lot of radio exposure or MTV. You guys had more MTV than we did, but it was. We knew that we were carrying the flag, but at the same time, all we had to rely on were those riffs, were those going out and playing those 260 shows, you know, on an 18-month cycle, you know. We just kept playing and kept playing and kept playing, and it eventually burned us out to death. But, yeah, carrying that flag and saying, it's not dead, come take a look at this, you know, when everybody else was saying it's dead. There's 10,000 people showing up every damn night, you know.
I think another important thing about surviving for a while is, you know, if you're going to be doing this for a long time, obviously you're making music to make music, but you also have to have, hopefully people like it and then play it or buy it or stream it or whatever it is. So I hope I know the answer, but I'm going to ask anyway. So Howard, like when you're writing a song, are you writing it for yourself? Are you writing it for the other guys in the band? Are you writing it for the fans? Like when you're cultivating a song down the road, ultimately, what's the most important part of that for you?
That it doesn't sound stupid. You know, just
Who's the stupid meter checker? Is that you?
well, you know, you want to stay away from certain cliches and things like that. But yeah, you want to keep yourself in check. But I don't know. I just basically try and get a vibe where just the song feels complete. And a lot of times you'll write and it's like a piece works, it doesn't. And everybody writes differently, so it's kind of a hard thing to answer. Just for me, I get a vibe, and then when it's done, it's done. And then if I record it and I hear it and it's not finished, I just want to die every time I hear it. And there's many songs like that throughout the years.
And you have to live with them.
Yep.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, are you ever if you put out a record, are you ever fully satisfied with that record? You always go like, man, I really don't like that, or I wish I could have done that better.
Impossible.
Yeah, that's you always hear something. That's why I don't listen to Anthrax records. After they're your baby, and then you let them out to the world, and you know this bass part's, damn it, should have did, what an idiot I was, you know, I should have put that there. We should have took this chorus, half a chorus. whatever it is, you hear it later and you say, but no regrets. Once you put it out, it's everybody else. You share with the world. So.
And by the time you put it out, you've lived with it forever, so you know all the flaws of the song.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's the catch.
But you live with it, and look again, and then you go tour it for 2 years, and that's what happens.
I think most of us avoid listening to our own records.
Absolutely.
I think most people do. I think wasn't Robert Plant was on Howard Stern the other day, and he's asking him, do you ever listen to your own records? Do you ever have sex to your own records? I've had sex.
That was a great question.
Yeah. He got a strange look out of it. The point is, musicians, you never want to do that because it gets your wheels turning, and you start thinking, oh, I could have done this different. I could have played that solo so much better.
It's not as though you don't love the records. I love our last few records, but I guess when we're finished and it comes out, you listen to them just to learn them. Let's face it, you want to learn the songs so you know them live. The backgrounds, all that stuff. I personally have to listen to them and get the coordination of singing them and playing. And once that's done, then I kind of say, okay, on to the next. And then you start writing again. That's just the way it works.
Everybody here? Everybody all right?
Yeah, you guys okay? In the back too, you good? Okay, cool.
So to that end, isn't it, because I've just noticed, like whenever a band, pretty much every record they don't like, or they're bummed about it, they want it to be better. And doesn't that spur you on to try to make the next record a better record? And I've seen a couple of times where bands kind of get to the point, well, this is the best record we've ever made, we love it, and it's all perfect, and then they kind of reach that plateau, and then where do you go from there? And you kind of, go on that, maybe downward slide a little bit, which, we could probably talk about some big bands that have done that. But is that kind of, you guys feel that way a little bit?
I love that. I love when, you come from one record, say, how are you going to top this? There's nothing I like hearing better than that, because that gets the fire under your ass. There's nothing better than that. Our last couple of records, people, how are you topping? Thankfully, people like it. It's all good. But to hear, how are you going to top this? Dude, the firelight's right under your ass. I got to work. You go back to the work ethic thing. You can't just lay down with this stuff. I mean, you got to live it, and you have to work it, and it's got to be real. And it's got to be right in your face, always.
Yeah, I think there's also a strange balance that you have to find between you liking it and caring about what your audience thinks. But you can't be dictated by what your audience thinks, because you can drive yourself crazy and run around in circles. But you can't be so self-indulgent to not care what the audience is going to think. I'll never forget being in high school and reading these Judas Priest interviews, and they're in the studio, and they're talking about this new musical direction, and they're so excited, and it's going to have guitar synths and all these catchy choruses.
Was this during Turbo?
It was during Turbo. So the point is, the record comes out, and if you like the record,
you're too young, Susie.
That's wonderful. But the record came out, and I remember putting the needle on. So excited with a girlfriend at the time. We were both big Priest fans, and looking at each other. What the hell is this? So you never want to. I've always thought, okay, I don't ever want to have that kind of reaction happen. But they were so excited about that record. And years later, I think Kerry referred to his least favorite Slayer record as that's our Turbo.
Absolutely. Well, I think, most bands going into making a record always are making the record really, really for themselves first, and everybody else later. And it's also about what they're influenced by at that time. And certainly, again, being around for a long time and surviving and doing things for a long time, you go through those spats or spates or whatever time period is where you're listening to something different. Good example for me is I'm always like a big Metallica defender because they're good friends of mine. And, people go, how could they make a record like even the Black Album? It's so commercial. It's like, well, they were listening to, or Load or Reload. Like they were listening to, so when they're making Load, they're listening to Blue Oyster Cult, Thin Lizzy, like all the 70s metal. That's kind of where that sounds. And then St. Anger they were obsessed with System of a Down, so that's kind of where that came from. It wasn't like there was plotting in the back to do something completely different. It's like, well, this is what we like and this is what our influences is, so we'll do it. And then they got back to the old school stuff, which is why the last record sounds so good. So is that kind of a little bit similar for you guys, where your songwriting or your songs at a specific time are based on whatever you're listening to at that time? You just put everything away and just go, I'm just going to write what I write.
I think that if you're not taking chances, you're taking up too much space, and that's just a way that, you know, we had incredible success. Number one, the biggest, heaviest number one, whatever they want to call it, number one record on Billboard. And the last thing in our minds was to try to commercialize on that success. We said, fuck you, we're going to go back in the studio, we're going to write the goddamn heaviest thing we've ever written in our lives. And that's what kept it going. You know, that's that kind of, God, you can't stay with the norms in this business. And it's changed so much, especially here in the last, you know, I'll say in the last 7 years.
Yeah, of course.
You know, I mean, this the old school way of us when we used to do it back in the day. It's just, it's out the door. You know, I think a lot of bands don't. You're only as good as your last note. You're only as good as that last song, you know, that last gig you played. And if it was if it's shit, then you got work to do. You know, that's just the way I look at it. It's just work ethic. And
You can't rest on it.
Period.
You
Hell
can't
no.
rest on your career
Any
and
kind of
your
laws
history.
in life.
Yeah, who wants to do? Look, the last thing you want to do, like, oh, I had the great last record. I could just lay back. Fuck that. Fuck. That's when you have to start working. That's when you have to get right into it and dig in. So there's just no time for that, man. Life is short. Go write your best record, the next record.
Right.
That's what it should be.
Good call. Oh, and I never listen to anything when I'm writing, just because I don't want to get influenced by it. So, oh, this album's amazing, and all of a
Exactly.
sudden,
I don't
you have ripped it off completely. So,
how do you-
hard
how do you-
pass.
What
How
you
do you-
said earlier, you know, you don't want it to sound stupid, but you also don't want it to sound like anything else.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's very, very often you can write what you think is the greatest riff, and man, this is great. You know, it's better than Metallica. Oh, it is Metallica. Yeah.
Well, yeah. How do you kind of in a way fact check that stuff? So when you're writing something, you don't go like, oh no, I've just stolen something from something I listened to 6 months. I guess don't listen to anything is probably a good way to
don't
do
listen
it.
to anybody, then have somebody like you who's heard everything fact check it.
Yeah, there you go. That riff sounds
Borrowing.
like this.
It's also borrowing. You know, it's gonna look. We all have sponges. It all goes. Our heads are sponges. You know, and you listen what you're listening to currently. I personally, I like going back to the Thin Lizzies and stuff like that because nothing like today sounds like that great stuff. So why not reinvent that stuff and just bring it? Maybe people go buy a Thin Lizzy record.
It's called The
How
Rip.
great would that be, right?
Awesome. So, how do you feel? So, I'll ask this to Frankie because I just know we have a situation here where one of our artists, Behemoth, took a riff directly from an Anthrax song and used it in their song. So, when people do that, is that flattering to you, or you're like, hey, these guys are ripping us off? Or
And I hope they're a huge group and give me some publishing somewhere.
There you go.
No, Behemoth, they're awesome. And that's a compliment. I think it is anyway. So look, at the end of the day, who doesn't take something from Led Zeppelin, all the greats? So the way I look at it, that's the ultimate compliment. You
And
know,
it keeps
we-
the brand alive.
and it keeps it going, man.
There
Oh,
you
it
go.
sounds like Anthrax. Cool, you're mentioning Anthrax. I'll take that. Thank you.
As long
Very
as they
cool.
mention it.
Yeah,
You
it's all
know.
positive, man.
Yeah.
There is a picture somewhere floating around of Dio holding up a sign that says, "Hey, Killswitch, where's my royalties?"
yes.
I don't know who has it, but it does exist.
Google it. It's up there for sure. Yeah, they did get paid too. By the way, you have to. Well, if you actually cover somebody's song, you actually have to pay the publishing. Otherwise, you're in big trouble. So if somebody does a cover of something, then obviously they get paid anyway. But it's interesting when you just lift a little piece. Although now with rap and everything, you have to make sure you get all that stuff approved. We did a Guar record once. And there was a sample on the Guar record. They're like, what is this sample? Because we didn't know we could barely hear it, but we didn't know what it was. It's, don't worry, it's like some movie that like 2 people saw and you'll never know about it. We're like, all right, so we put the record on. Next thing we get this letter from some massive law firm in New York going, by the way, you used the song, you need to register all these records and give us these thousands of dollars. We're like, wait, what? Turned out it was some massive act. I'm going to forget the name of it now. It was like a rap act that had some huge track, and they picked like 5 minutes. Do you remember, Tracy, what that was? Yeah, anyway, so we sorted it all out, but we had to pay a lot of money to them, and then, we ended up keeping the record, the track on the record, but we had to pay them moving forward. So you got to be careful with that sort of stuff. So, what's that? Thank you, Lost Poets. Mike, is that you, Mike? Nice voice there. Stop. You need to stop talking.
Sign 'em up.
So one of the other things, obviously, about staying alive in the business for a long period of time is economics. Because you can't do this for a long period of time if you're not making some money and earning a living. So again, how do you guys? Maybe we'll start with you, Alex. How do you how do you deal with that whole situation where you're getting certain money from here and from there, and how do you make a life out of it? Is it difficult? Is it harder now? Clearly, the business has changed where you're probably making more off merch and touring than the other stuff.
Yeah, I think it's probably different for everybody. I know I'm a bit of a freak because I exist outside of the metal genre, and I work with musicians outside of the metal genre. So, for example, I just did a show recently supporting Brand X, who's like the 70s jazz rock group, with one person. And the musicians in that band, there's a bass player who played with Pat Metheny, a drummer who played with Santana. And I'm very lucky I'm able to work with musicians like that. I taught at a guitar camp with Joe Satriani and Vi, and I did another thing. It was all bass players, but I was the guitarist. And just with very diverse bass players, everybody from Stu Ham, who I play with, to Alfonso Johnson from Weather Report. So I have this whole instrumental world that I'm able to exist in. But I think that, and I enjoy teaching, and I enjoyed giving talks and just doing a variety of things. I know some musicians hate teaching. Some music teachers hate teaching, and they shouldn't teach. But I love it. So whether it's guitar clinics or these camps or there's just add that to the touring. I think you just have to have a diverse. If you're going to use a professional business term, diverse income stream.
You're supplementing your income basically by doing other things outside of just being a testament or whatever else, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think at least from how I've experienced metal, and Metallica is a big exception. But a lot of metal bands you've heard of that you consider very successful metal bands are in situations where they need to diversify. I think the idea that we all had as kids, we're going to make it, and our one band that we're in is going to make us all this money and be our sole source of income. I think that's gone for the most part, unless you're very, very lucky. That's not the case anymore.
Anybody else supplementing their income with other stuff? I mean, I think it's kind of I don't know about Anthrax is pretty big, so you're probably in good shape.
We fucking work. We don't come off the road. This is our first time. This is the first time in how many years, Brian? You know this. We've had 3 months. I got to know my family, which is my son who got tall. I said, "Who are you?" It's one of those
18.
things. Yeah, he's 18. He's driving. Dad, have the car. What? But it's one of those things. We've been on the road, so when you come home, you don't want to do anything. You don't want to work. We're fortunate enough, again, going back to that, to make a living doing this. But when you come home, I can't imagine trying to supplement my income, because then I wouldn't do the Anthrax thing if that wasn't doing everything. Creatively, just to get away from what we do, you need that. You have the trio thing, you have your side thing going. David Ellison and I, we do this Altitudes and Attitude thing. You need that. You need that creatively just to get away from this world that we're in. And there's nothing wrong with that world. You just need creatively. And that's not going to pay, you don't see that paying you up. That's just, you need that fulfillment and getting it out of you. So that's the way it works.
Yeah, I've been constantly doing stuff on the side, and it's not because of the pay or anything. I just, if I sit still, I think I'll die. So,
That's
yeah,
good.
it really is.
Motivated.
I think if you enjoy working, then.
Yeah, so you enjoy it, you do it, and I just kind of have to. I mean, if I can sit still for 2 hours and watch a movie, I'm pushing it. It's I'm struggling right now. It's just I don't know if you guys see it. I'm twitching like crazy.
Do we need a seatbelt?
so
You're doing great, by the way.
Hey, you're doing
Great,
good.
David.
But yeah, I've just been doing just some writing for other bands and doing voiceover work and things like that. It's just stuff that I've enjoyed, and I'm not good at much else other than running my mouth. So, if it translated into something else, cool, and it just kind of did. But musicians for the most part are, 80% unemployable dudes anyway. So it's
Right.
and then you throw hand tattoos and neck tattoos on it. Oh yeah, enjoy your Napa Auto Parts store job. So so we have to make the most of what we are. And so, like, yeah, if you enjoy it, push, go for it.
All right, so anybody have any questions out there for anybody up here? Right in the front here.
I'm wondering, like, for surviving the business, do you read what the critics say? Because they're not always nice. And do you avoid critics to keep going, or do you look at
That's a
it?
good question. It depends on the critics. You know, there are professional critics,
Right.
and there are comment section critics. And I think it's good to avoid the comment section critics because these are people that don't know what they're talking about. They're the annoying people you went to school with that just have an opinion on everything and just will blast you or your record just for the sake of blasting it. But that said, as far as reviewers and professional, sometimes they get it wrong too. But you can't close yourself off to it. Too. I think the best thing we were talking about this earlier as far as like songs and whether they sound like other songs and. Brian, somebody you could play a song for, he'll give you an honest opinion. I think it's good to have people around you that you trust that will give you an honest opinion and say, no, this isn't as strong as your last album, or this sounds like so-and-so.
But here's a
Anybody
question
else?
with that. You going to change for that guy or that girl, right?
Well, then it's up to you.
That's
Fuck
good.
that.
That's good.
Fuck that. And you and your little computer getting big man fucking balls.
There you go.
Fuck you. That's the way I have to say it. Look, I have no problem with. That's just the truth. That's why you got to keep your nose to the grind, and that's the truth. So I'm sorry if you don't like it. This is the best I have, and hopefully you'll like the next one. But I can't get down by somebody else. Somebody could just literally be in their room and want to take down somebody for the day, be in a shit mood from their life, and ruin my day. Come on, man, I'm trying hard here.
I hate
all,
that
all I
platform.
want is a shot. That's all. Just don't be a dick. That's all. But everybody's got their opinions. They're like asshole. Everybody has ones, right? Everybody has an asshole. So it's all good. You have your opinion. That's good. But I just don't read them. I want people to like it. That's cool. But if you read them, I don't want to get down.
But it's not the end all.
It's not. It shouldn't be
It's
either.
not. If it's good constructive criticism,
That's
great. And that's how you kind of gauge. All right, great. But at the end of the day, I don't give a shit. I really don't. It doesn't affect me one
I
way
think
or
I'm
the other.
I don't know if anybody else. I have no social media.
Wow.
So
Good for you.
So yeah, because I just
Smart man.
As I pretty much go on the assumption, they're just going to hate what I'm doing because I like what I'm doing too much. So there must be something wrong with it. So I'll assume everyone hates it and go from there. If you like it, great. But yeah, you're going to get negative. But I'm not going to read it. I'm happy doing what I do. I do it to the best of my ability. I have people around me that'll tell me, what they think. But at the same time, if you write something that's not good, it's not good. If it doesn't give you that little spark inside, you need to crumble it up and throw it over your shoulder. So you are your own worst critic at all times if you're a musician.
Yeah.
So
You're your most
there you
important
go.
critic.
Good with the bad, right?
And so there's where it lies. And so all we can do is just give you the best we have and hope you enjoy it and come along for the ride. If not, we get it. We'll definitely try again because we don't have other jobs.
And remember, he's unemployable, so he's got to make this work.
The
You had a question?
Pretty much answered. I was just going to ask nowadays, without the major labels, a lot of people have their independence and stuff. It's easier to be more creative. You don't have someone leaning on you saying, hey, we want a little more mainstream or.
I would hope so. Look, being an independent label, obviously we give the bands full, complete creative control. I don't tell them to do anything. But, I think even, you guys can chime in. You would know better than I do in your situations. But I don't think that's really the case too much anymore. It certainly was back in the 80s, but not now.
Yeah, it's definitely working independent helps. And, some of the bigger bands, they know you have to work within that framework, and that's kind of awful.
And sorry.
Oh,
And
no,
you
go ahead.
kind
I
of have the
didn't
best
have
of both
much.
worlds now because, a lot of independents like us, we're distributed by Sony pretty much worldwide, so it's an independent label, but with major distribution. Like, Frankie's labels are the same way. And, a lot of, pretty much every out here is kind of in a similar situation on a label that is an independent label but has major distribution. So you get a bit of the best of both worlds, kind of.
Yeah, it didn't used to be that way. At
No.
least like the first wave of thrash metal, with Testament, we were on Megaforce, but we were under the umbrella of Atlantic, and there was these people did they know pop music, and they kind of understand it, but not really. And now it's great because there's so many labels that are run by fans. Ryan's a fan, and he's been in the business a long time. But now you have a lot more labels like that, and I think they tend to be much more respectful to the bands.
Absolutely. Yes.
Oh, I'm from Fort Worth, and I grew up with Pantera. I
Right
got
on.
my first broken rib at Pantera.
Right on.
Yes.
My question is are you guys' audiences as rowdy as they used to be? Are they like crunching each other out stuff? Like that?
There's some video we could probably show you. Shows
Today, like it used to be?
different audiences.
Well, not the people that were there the first time around. I mean,
I think the kids forgot how to dance. It used to be it was a ritual dance. If somebody fell down, you picked them up, and then it became like in the late '90s, it became a slugfest, and now it's just a full-out brawl. Which you're getting away from the music here, kiddos. It's all about the unity of bringing everybody together to have a good time, right? That's what we do it for in the first place. Regardless of, we got our influence from ZZ Top. We just played it extremely fast, So, and we had some of the craziest mosh pits in the world, but, it's just gotten away from all that kind of nonsense. And then the cameras, we can go on about that one for fucking ever. But
you know what I noticed?
But you know what?
It's a great
Screw it.
question. I noticed there's a turnaround. There's a younger generation coming in, along with our crowd that's been around for a while. And I noticed there's a nice mix in the crowd. So the people that want to mosh will go up to the front of the stage and go nuts, right? And people that just want to watch the show stay back a little bit. I think that's a great combination, So it's all welcome because it just shows our music is growing and it's surviving. Again, surviving. So I'm finding it really, when I see a younger generation come in, it's, fuck yeah, let's do this, because they heard about the name and they
There
came
you
and
go.
checked it out, and now they're Anthraxers for life.
Well, let me ask
wait,
you.
well, hold on. Before we move on, got to point out, you said, this is where I got my first broken rib. What are you doing? That there's
Not the last.
multiple.
Yeah, where was this?
Because you did put emphasis on first. I was just curious.
She's enjoying the
Nothing?
shows.
Nothing? All right.
Well, that was the era where the stage divers were running off the stage. And
Oh yeah, that was fun.
So are we
I
like
did
at
that.
3
I
and
did that at
4
shows.
or counting? Or are there more?
I like to be pretty rowdy. Cool. I'm a cowboy.
I like it.
Stay in there, girl.
Frankie brought up something kind of interesting that I want to ask you guys about. And again, because we're all doing this for so long, you've seen the changes start. Like when I started going to concerts at first, I had to admit I was a bootlegger. I would stick a tape recorder in my pants and
You
walk
bastard.
in and tape the show and have trade it with some people around the world, and you get stuff. So it was really cool. So, and that was, you don't do that. I mean, I get caught a few times, but I learned how to do it. I'd bring my tape recorder in. If they catch me, I said, look, I parked like 3 miles away. Just take my batteries. Without the batteries, it can't work. And then I have my friends sneak in batteries, and I'd make it work. So now fast forward to today, or the last over 5 or 6 years, where everybody's got a friggin' cell phone, and they're recording the show. So I have 2 questions for you guys as musicians. Number one, is that annoying to you, number one? But number two, in a weird way, does knowing that every show you're doing is going to be on the internet for people to see, does that kind of make you think, I better play really good tonight? Where in the old days, not that you wouldn't do that, but if you had a bad show, not that many people would really know about it, but now it's more available.
Want to take this?
The minute you say you hate it, they're going to start doing it even more. You know what I'm saying? So, I think that some of these bands that are requesting that the phones be either shut off or taken, some bands they're actually putting the phones.
Oh, yeah,
for
Prince,
some of these bigger,
Danzig.
I
Yeah,
think
there's a
that's
few.
a brilliant idea because you're there for a concert for the atmosphere and the mood and the songs, and not to sit there and next to your buddy and go, Facebook, whatever. I'm not a big fan of that platform, but it helps. I don't do it, but it's just it's inevitable. What can you do? If people are very genuine with what they're doing and they want to keep it for prosperity, great. But you find that 95% of the assholes out there don't.
Yeah, and as far as going up on the stage, I mean, and oh my God, I might fuck up because they're taping this. So what? Right? I wanted to be. When I was even going to concerts, I remember Kiss. I was hoping that Ace would fuck up somewhere. So it was my show. It was my show. It was a special show, or somebody in the band, whatever, Cheap Trick, whatever band you want. I would hope, because it felt special. Oh, I remember Ace Frehley at the Coliseum. He couldn't get the guitar on that string that pulled it up. That was my show. See, I found that was a really cool show. So I kind of want the fuck ups. I hope I fuck up in the show. Let's have fun.
I agree with that. Like I saw, I'm a massive Iron Maiden fan. I go see them way too many times. I saw, 12 shows in this last run. But the very end one, like Bruce was kind of being a goofball and just doing all this crazy, weird stuff and saying crazy things on stage. So it was like, well, this is really cool. It's completely different from the other stuff. So I get that. Any more questions? We got to have some more. Yes, you're in the front here.
I think kind of like for Anthrax, my favorite album is Sound and White Noise.
Cool.
And then today it was announced like Metal, I think it's called Metal Agents.
Yeah.
And John Bush is going to be there. Are you going to,
Cool.
you've been at Folsom, are you going to play with them?
I will be on the Killswitch tour starting for that. So I'm going to be, no, but I love John Bush. All good.
So those are like kind of like my favorite, like some of my favorite ones are the ones he did with him, but they kind of don't play the songs, or you kind of forgot about them.
You know what I love? I love that you just love one Anthrax record. Honestly, you know what I mean? So if you just like one, I'm happy just because you like something we did. And that really means a lot to me, honestly, dude. So thank you for that. But that was a different band. Now it's a different band now.
Right behind him there, a question?
Okay, so we're discussing how long it takes to get in the music business and how the bands, a lot of the younger ones, can't really survive. Do you think pay to play has anything to do with that? Because, all these younger bands are having to come up with the money to buy onto a show.
I think that's had a massive effect. I mean, I grew up here in
absolutely.
LA, and there's an amazing scene when I was a kid going to high school and stuff, like 79 through the mid 80s, where all these bands, we know, Motley Crue, Metallica, Slayer, Guns N' Roses, on and on and on. And that ended when pay to play started. And very similar in New York, where New York for a lot of times had a lot of great bands come in, and it started. So my personal opinion is absolutely, I think there's been a huge problem. Absolutely.
I think there's a lot of,
Killed the strip.
Yeah.
I think
Till they
there's a
killed
lot
it.
of really good bands you don't hear because they're broken, a lot of real bands that are shoved down your throat because they have money.
Generally, I hate to say this, but broke bands are great. If I walk in and see a brand new band and they have all this really nice equipment and shiny and new and everything's good, I go, these guys are not going to be good, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Most
it's
of the
like
time.
you don't want to generalize, but yeah, it's like, second show. You got better stuff than I do. All right.
Yes, sir.
Good to know.
Just something about pay to play. These kids want to open up for their favorite band, they end up selling 40 tickets or $20 each, $800, whatever. Is there a possible way that now with all the streaming and all that some of the labels, like in your case, the label, have like one origin, like a sign band, like Cannibal Corpse or the Evil, play and do a showcase for local bands without paying to play? Because you're already drawing people with a big band.
Well, no, it's a very good point. And if you didn't hear it, his point was like, if we had a couple bands like Cannibal Corpse or somebody else, would we do like a showcase for local bands in there? And it's really interesting you mentioned that because we talk about this all the time. And like, I'm a record label, so I'm not a booking agent, so I can't force an issue there. But, we've had this discussion within our metal world about that exact thing because can't we ask, managers and stuff, and even talking to the agents, isn't there a way that we can have our two bands play and get a local band that's good to play? But it's difficult because then you have to rely on the promoters in that local area to find the right bands, and they're usually going to just find
Good
whatever
luck.
band
You
they
can put
know.
5 bands on the bill. And,
So it's
right.
really hard. I mean, we would love
Run
to
it
do
by.
that, and there's a theory behind that, but it's very difficult too because the promoters are the ones that really have to be the guys to play ball with you.
The thing we played with Testament, with Anthrax in Guadalajara with Motorhead, a place called the Hell in Heaven Festival, and they did that. They brought some of the big bands that were going to play the festival, and they did local showcases and a bunch of CDs in it. Cool. And they brought about 70 full boxes
Yep.
full of people on different.
Yeah, it's great
That's
when they
awesome.
can do that. I remember that show. And also, we did a festival. Montreal has a great festival now called Heavy MTL. And they do a contest. They do a battle of the bands. And they've been doing that for a few years. I'm not sure if they're still doing it, but for a while they were doing this. They picked the best band. The best band gets to play at the festival. And
We are the battle of the bands for the shows that you guys are doing in Tijuana this Thursday to pick the bands to open up for you guys.
yeah.
Without having to do nothing standing on their heads,
Well, you guys are doing it right there. They do the same thing in Europe too. A lot of big festivals there will all have, like an unsigned band stage or something. So it's good. I mean, we want to do it over here, and we try, but it's a tricky. But I think it's slowly moving in that direction. Question way in the back there.
So Frank, you've clearly demonstrated you're willing to share your opinion.
Is that bad?
Frankie? No.
No.
Hey, Dad.
Really? This guy?
Sorry.
East Coast metal, West Coast metal, Europe.
Metal, period.
Good answer.
Wow, look at that.
Suck it, sir.
There, all the way in the back there. Yeah, I get asked that a lot, and I would love to do that, but it's a gigantic, massive pain in the ass, quite honestly. I mean, we've done small shows for our anniversaries, and it's a gigantic headache. We were kind of talking earlier about, this one thing I love about what's happening here with the Loudwire Awards is, these great awards with, phenomenal show. They had a kickoff party last night, and then they're having these panels here, which is kind of like what we used to do in Foundations Forum in the old days. And you guys are all probably way too young for that. But in the early 90s, for about 4 or 5 years, Concrete Management, who used to manage Pantera, by the way, and us, more so them than us, used to do these amazing, it was a whole big thing. Panels, festivals, concerts, and so many bands came up through that. And we would love to do something like that again. But to do that, it takes, number one, a lot of money, a lot of people to get together, do it on the same page. People running, it's very difficult. But I am happy with what's happening in the U.S. now with a lot of these festivals happening. A lot of them being booked by Danny Wimmer, like the Rock on the Range and Chicago Open Air and all these sort of things, because they're really kind of doing it really well there. So I will leave it to the experts and not get in to do that. But you never know. Someday we'll just try to get our bands on those festivals. Thanks, though. Yes.
In the last panel, Steve, I was talking about how some of the best advice he got from Frank Zappa was to take control of his own publishing, know his own publishing. And obviously, you have sub-publishers in foreign territories and all of that. But I wanted to get your guys' perspective, because there are other people that would say there are advantages to having working with a separate publisher so that you can focus as a songwriter more on the creative side and have the publisher put in more of the work to get your songs pushed for sync and all of that. I just wanted to know if you guys have your own publishing companies, or if not, if you work with a separate publisher, why that is.
I do. I've got 3 or 4 of them, but the streaming thing is, if you did the numbers of Pantera, it's amazing. It's ridiculous, the amount of streaming. So there's 2 ways of looking at that. You can take it as good, for every stream, it's worth so much as they count it as a physical. I'm still trying to figure out how this works.
It's complicated.
But if you get those things on the right, like say my solo record, if you get it onto the right playlist, and somebody eventually finds that on say some let's say, just for instance, on a Foo Fighters thing or something like that, instantly the streams go completely up, and then it can turn other people on to it. So it is still a grassroots kind of thing with the streaming and Spotify and everything else. Before I did this record, I felt the other way about it, and now I don't, because that is the wave of how we're going to be able to get paid off records, basically.
Real money, basically. I know the last.
We don't have enough time for that subject, but
yeah.
It's very interesting, and it's very strenuous to try to relate it in a short amount of time.
2 things about that. I'll just make a real quick comment, because I know the last panel was basically about that, but I did want to corroborate what Jackie said. And I didn't see the whole panel, but I know she was saying that half of her revenue for the label that she got was from streaming, and I will say absolutely the same thing for us. We were really late to the party, as were most of the metal labels on the streaming stuff, because we were kind of waiting to get paid the same the majors were. We didn't feel it was fair to not get paid what they get paying, so we kind of waited it out. We did the same thing with iTunes way back in the day as well. But now that we're there, there and it's working really well, it's a game changer now. Every single day there's more money coming in from streaming, and we still do a lot of physical product. Like in Germany's still 1993. Like it's 85% physical
yeah.
there. They don't want to do anything about streaming. But everywhere else in the world, it's really becoming something big. And our numbers, just to really quickly tell you, we were really concerned about our overall numbers for 2017 because we knew we were going to lose 25 to 30% of our overall business, which is physical, which has been our business for 35 years. And we weren't really sure how much we were going to make up in the streaming. So we kind of sat down and said, okay, we need to cut a bunch of money out of our budget just to be on the safe side so we can survive this because we're really worried. And we did that, and we didn't have any really major releases coming out the first year, really until Black Dahlia Murder, which came out a couple weeks ago, top 10 on Billboard, by the way. Anyway, yeah, thanks. But the streaming numbers made up so much that up until that record, with no new releases, we were even with where we were last year, and last year we had a Monomarth record come out. So the streaming numbers are really huge. I argue with bands all the time. I go, you guys are going to be making a lot of money on this. I mean, it hasn't quite all the way trickled down to the metal side quite yet. It's getting there. But you look at your statements, and the last 6 months of last year is a big increase. The first 6 months of this year is a big increase. It's going in the direction where people are going to make a bunch of money. And real quickly on your publishing question, we always encourage bands to keep their own publishing. There's two ways to do it. If you keep your own publishing, as Rex said, you have a beneficiary of that. If you do end up working with somebody like a BMG, for example, for publishing, or Sony, whomever, they can offer things as well. They're going to take a piece, or they're going to give you an advance maybe you need for something, and they'll take a piece for that. But they also can do some promotional stuff for you too. It just kind of depends on the band how you do it. We don't really take bands publishing anymore because we're a record company. We don't do that. So, any other questions? I saw a couple. Yes, sir.
You mentioned, playing live, going out and playing live. Recently, the last few years, you'll see, a club with a bunch of local bands, and right down the street will be, Motley Crue tribute band, which will be sold out.
Right.
This place will be empty. It's kind of difficult to
Good point.
It will always be difficult. Just keep plugging away, man.
Yeah, keep plugging away, and
Yeah.
maybe you can combine those two bands, right? On different maybe
Play-
you can combine some of those bands together, play together. I know it's harder, but that might have to be the future, just to get in front of people. That's the way I look at it. Anything you can do to get in front of people, to make them that's the way I think about it. Just get me in front of anybody.
We met in '86 and we were playing covers.
Oh, dude.
Oh,
I remember,
But
yeah.
we were throwing in originals.
We were loaded off
First
our
time
ass
I
and we were
heard
playing
you
covers.
guys.
And that's how we got this big, huge devotion out of Texas. Sorry about the
Van Halen was a cover band, basically.
Of course.
But I think now that was before the tribute. Tribute bands are different, though. Yeah, no, now it's a whole other thing. And I actually played a club in Sheffield earlier this year with my jazz group, but they had posters for tribute band. Like everybody who plays there that's rock is a tribute band, and it was just very strange. And the whole hallway was full of these posters, and you'd think all these huge bands played there, and you realize it's like, they changed the logo slightly. They look slightly different.
So I met the
ZZ
guy.
Top band, the guy's beard isn't quite as big. Yeah.
I met the guys in Stained, and they were a cover band. That's when I first played with them. They were a cover band.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I saw
We played,
Metallica.
we're original, got paid $50. They made thousands that
Yep.
night.
First time they weren't cover bands per se, but the first time I saw Metallica and Slayer, they played mostly covers. So I
No,
don't know,
not
maybe,
these. They were called Stained, the heaviest grunge show. This was real. That's what it was.
maybe that's the new way. Bands have to be a tribute band, and then you slowly work in your originals. Oh, that's terrible to say, but keep it up. I don't want to do that. More.
Please keep it up.
Yeah, please keep it up. Don't ever get. I mean, if you love the music, I mean, we're all up here. We're all successful because we truly love the music, and the only thing we do what we do is because we love the music, and that comes first. And if you believe in it, no matter how long it takes or how many times you fall off the horse or hit a brick wall, you'll be successful. Yeah, there you go. More questions? I saw a couple. Yes, sir. Way in the back there.
I saw recently that Dave Grohl was in the pit for Metallica. I was just wondering if there's any bands that, not that you guys go to the pit per se, but like that you go to as fans and that you will kind of be in that fan mode.
Yeah,
Oh, dude.
All the time.
so always. I mean,
Any show. Go to
actually, Anthrax, we were just in, I forgot, we were in Europe somewhere, and we went to a Foo Fighters show. As a fan, look, I love the Foo Fighters. I love Grohl. He's great, awesome. He's great guys. Stood on the side of the stage, and it's funny because Grohl, he comes up to me and Scott. He gives us a big, sweaty, disgusting hug all over us, right? And he goes, "I was so fucking nervous because you guys were here. Fuck the 73,000 people." He's like, "I was nervous because you guys were there." But yeah, as a fan, I felt that was a great compliment. I love music. Again, just because we do this doesn't mean I'm still a diehard Kiss fan from the 70s stuff, So Cheap Trick's playing near my house, about 10 minutes from my house, dude. I will be front row. I will be front row for Cheap Trick because they deserve it. That's the truth.
Yeah, I just the Scorpions Megadeth tour came through New York. I live in New York. Ellefson called me up, but I went. And seeing Scorpions, it was just like, instantly becoming a kid again. And singing along, and I forgot that I played music professionally. And seriously, and those melodies, they're just sounding better than ever. So if you haven't seen Scorpions lately, see them. They keep saying they're retiring. I hope they don't.
They're not ever. Nobody's
they
ever
should
retiring.
not retire because they're just killing
They're
it.
great. Hey, I was in the Snake Pit for Metallica on this last tour, and I go see Iron Maiden all the time. I'm a fanatical Iron Maiden fan. So
Last show I went to see was
We're all fans.
Gojira. Great band. Awesome
yeah?
band.
they opened for
Great
Metallica
guys.
as I was in the Snake Pit, and they crushed. Which that's not an easy thing for a band to play that weird stage there. So it's cool. More questions. I saw somebody else. Was there somebody else? Anybody else? Gonna make me ask more questions now? Damn it! I was afraid of that.
Right here in
Oh,
front.
there we go. Thank you.
Have you all always wanted to be musicians, or did anybody want to be a veterinarian? You just always
Yes.
wanted to be a musician?
Veterinarian for sure. No.
When I was in high school, it was either baseball or music. I was doing both, and I wasn't good enough to go to college for baseball. I was in the high school team and all that stuff, but I wasn't good enough, so it had to be music.
How do you feel playing at Yankee Stadium?
I got in trouble at Yankee Stadium. You know that story? You guys know?
This is a great story.
That's
You
a
should
crazy
tell
story.
it.
Well, we played the Big Four. If you guys don't know, we did this Big Four show at Yankee Stadium, and I'm a diehard Yankee fan. I'm sorry for those of you who hate them. So I'm a diehard Yankee fan. So the one thing I felt really fortunate. I went out early and just scoped the area as you would, because if you're on the field, I know it's the new Yankee Stadium, but I still wanted to get a vibe. So I'm in the dugout. The guy let me in the dugout, and that's unheard of, right? So I'm dreaming I'm the manager, right? Because I'm an idiot. There's a game going on in my head. I'm just like this, and all of a sudden, I put it in my head that the umpire made a bad call. So I'm screaming, right? The guy's seeing me. So then I see the second base. The second base there. The one thing I've always wanted to do is slide into second base. So all right, I got it set. The cops over there. There's a bunch of cops over there just talking as cops. There's some security guys over here. I can make it. I can definitely make this shot. So there's a little barrier on the dugout there. So I get on it, right? All of a sudden I hear this voice from this cop. If you go on there, you will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And he goes, "You will not. I don't care what band you're in. You will not play this show." That was it. I'm still nervous the way he said it because it sounded like the voice of God, And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not going to get this chance, but I didn't do it. I probably should have did it, but then we wouldn't have played. Or maybe they would have.
You and Scott both getting in trouble with the Yankees there.
Yeah, but legally, I don't think you could talk about that, right?
No.
All right, so I'm not touching that.
Read his book. Read his book.
Yeah, I'm
That's
not
all I'll
talking
say. Read his book.
Oh, that's right. It's in his book.
It's in his book. By the way, the only reason I'm doing what I'm doing is I couldn't be a musician. I couldn't play anything. So I ended up going the other way around. I was a journalist and then kind of looked into this ridiculous job. So.
Yeah, I think it kind of finds you, music. You just and especially growing up, I couldn't imagine doing anything else. I grew up and I had discovered a lot of interest as an adult, like writing and film. All like there's things I could imagine doing now if I had to do it over. But growing up, like all I could care about was guitars. And then I think for a lot of us, when Kiss came out, it was like Superman and Batman being in the same band, and it was like, it was like this comic book superhero film with music, and it just took over. It was just like, okay, we can't do anything else.
So so we're talking about music and being old and whatnot here. So what was I'll go down the road here. What was your first ever Well, they have the book up there. Cool. Well, that's nice. Thank you, whoever did that.
Just happened to notice that.
Hey.
Plug.
Well, yeah, a little plug. So my first concert was Kiss in at the Forum in 1976 on the tour they did after Alive came out, right before Destroyer came out. So what was yours?
1979. I was 10, and I had to cry to get my brother. I have an older brother, and he was going to go, and my parents weren't going to let me go, and I cried, guilted my brother into taking me, and I think I caught the tail end of the original lineup of Kiss, and I think I knew every song. I think that's the only concert I've seen where like I knew every song, every word to every song. I was that much of a fan. And little did I know on that tour there was all this infighting, and they were on the verge of breaking up. But to me, that was just the greatest concert of all time.
Howard?
I think it was a local band called Surfingly Poper.
So what was your
I
first?
love them.
What was your first big
The first
concert?
big one. I'm sorry, I just remembered that band. My mind just went back, and
That's amazing.
wow, that was terrible. That was a long time ago.
What was the first good concert you went to? How's
First
that?
good concert?
Has there been any?
Wow. As far as like actual big one,
First arena concert.
first arena concert. But yeah, it's really hard because it's all kind of bled into each other. But Metallica.
All right, fair enough. Frank?
Just
Same.
yeah, and that of course just changes everything.
Well, for me, it was the same tour that you saw in L.A., 76, Kiss, and Nassau Coliseum. And then it was over. For me, I was that's it. You know, that's what happens. It just has that kind of impression on you.
Aerosmith Rocks, 70.
Ooh,
Good
oh, that's
Six?
Wow.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
70,
Wow.
76, 77.
Love that record. I didn't get to see them until like '78. So that record was
I
so
was there,
amazing.
too. And the Texas jams, for sure.
Oh yeah, that's
legendary
right.
show.
That's a legendary show. Yeah.
so good.
I guess I've seen it, but I wasn't there. Wow, that's
Sammy's
amazing.
here, and he played on that
Oh really? Wow.
show that day with Van Halen.
That's awesome. It's funny. My neighbor took me to that first concert. He was an R&B guy who had like a couple hits in the '80s on A&M. His name was Karl Graves, and he actually ended up being the keyboard player in Oingo Boingo later, which is kind of funny. But I remember he took me there, and I was pretty young, and there's all this pot smoke. I was like, "What is that smell?" He's like, "I don't know. It's an interesting smell here."
I did.
What do you guys have any interesting stories about the first gigs you guys ever played? Were they good or were they train wrecks? Or train wrecks are always good. Frankie, what was the first concert you ever played?
Anthrax L'Amour's
Really?
in Brooklyn, yeah.
At L'Amour's?
At L'Amour's,
Were you
yeah.
opening for somebody?
I don't remember.
I don't remember.
It's a long time ago. It's a few years back.
Couple.
I just remember being really 17, turning 18, just getting in the band, and they said your first show is in L'Amour's in Brooklyn, and I've always known L'Amour's to be the rock capital of blah blah blah, and getting my car stereo stolen out of out of the parking lot. It was a great show. I just had nothing but adrenaline. I don't know if I remember the songs. All I know is just go. And I still remember that adrenaline. Just that's what got me through. Just headbang, put your head down, and do this, and got me through it.
Anybody else with any questions at the last minute here? Otherwise, I'm going to make Frankie tell a really good story. How many Iron Maiden fans? Oh, wait, question. There we go. Cool.
I have a question for Alex. What was it like when pre-Chuck Billy playing with Zetro?
Good question.
Pre-Testament, known as Legacy.
What's the question? Is like comparing them or?
What was it like playing with Zetro before Chuck Billy?
Oh, well, actually, that ties into the last question because the first gig I ever did was with Zetro, and it was Testament we were called Legacy at the time, and I was 16, and I was so nervous. We did the song "Burnt Offerings," and where it's just clean guitar, and I'm playing. My hands were shaking so much. I was like a shy, introverted kid, and I could just barely hit the notes. But yeah, it really builds character. It builds character just to jump on stage at any level. And I wasn't sure where it would go at that point. I didn't know if this was a band we would be in for a long time. The venue was called Ruthie's Inn. I mean,
Legendary
this little
place, by the way.
I didn't know this would be called Legendary Place. We thought of it as kind of like this, this wino bar down on San Pablo. Nobody's gonna remember this, but now, Ruthie's Inn. You go everywhere in the world, people know about Ruthie's Inn. It's amazing, and yeah, I mean, back in those days, it was interesting because Zetro was kind of he was the tyrant of the band. He was he was a disciplinarian in a way, which was good. He made sure everybody had to show up at rehearsal on time, and I saw him berating some of the other guys who were late to rehearsal. I was thinking, what am I getting myself into here? And then, he just demanded loyalty. And then he was the first one to leave the band. But, it's the way it works, exactly. We patched it up, and we're friends now, and he and Chuck write lyrics together, even on the recent stuff. And
well, he's
it's
a
all
big
good.
Calgary Flames fan, so he's all right. He's a hockey guy. Anyway, so that's our time. Thank you guys so much for coming out. We
Thank you
appreciate
for
it.
listening.
Thank you, guys.
all you guys for coming out and all the questions and everything. We greatly appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day and night. It'll be fun.